Hello there, I am Black Bright News and I wanted to talk a little bit about the headline £600,000 for Windrush advocacy. And a lot of people might say, oh, I thought that was over and done with. Why is that money coming out of taxpayers' pockets and stuff like that? So I just wanted to go through what's happening, why it's happening, and hopefully it'll make sense. So today a headline quietly landed in the news that has a weight far beyond the numbers, £600,000 available to support Windrush compensation claimants. At first glance, it might seem like another figure that the government is paying out of taxpayers' pockets, but behind that number are people, families, everyday citizens whose lives were disrupted in ways that still ripple through their daily existence. This isn't just policy, it's lived experience. This new funding is intended not as a direct payment to individuals, but to fund advocacy. That means trained, culturally aware people, often from community organisations or charities, who can walk alongside claimants. They guide them through forms, deadlines and evidence collection. They help translate experience of loss and trauma into something that a bureaucratic process can acknowledge. And they provide a kind of reassurance that is difficult to measure but is deeply real, someone by your side who sees your story, understands it, and knows how to make it heard. For some claimants, telling their story is not just an administrative task, it can be deeply painful. Revisiting moments of wrongful detention, denied health care, job loss or forced deportation can reopen old wounds. The system in many ways asks people to relive injustice in order to prove it. That is why this advocacy support is vital. It is not a luxury. It is recognition that navigating the process alone can be complex, intimidating and re-traumatizing. Even with volunteers and staff who have helped in previous rounds, the process can still feel overwhelming. The compensation scheme has been in place for years, but inconsistencies in support and the weight of bureaucracy mean that many people struggle to see their claims through. Advocates provide continuity, guidance and cultural understanding. And for those who have faced systemic failure before, that can make all the difference between giving up in frustration and successfully completing a claim. And yes, there are skeptics, people who ask, haven't the Windrush had enough money, or quietly question why taxpayers' money is being used in this way? And that perspective is understandable in a way. If all you see are headlines or payout figures, it can look like a story that has already been resolved. But what those critics often miss is that for the claimants themselves, the numbers rarely reflect the full reality of loss. For decades, people were wrongfully detained, denied employment, lost their homes, their bank accounts were frozen, they were stripped of documents, prevented from accessing healthcare, and treated as outsiders in a country they had long called home, not simply by choice, but because the law, history and the ties of the British Commonwealth recognised them as British subjects, entitled to live and work here without restrictions. Yet despite that, their rights were denied, their presence was questioned and their dignity repeatedly challenged. That is what makes the injustice so clear and why the compensation and the advocacy support to access it. It's not a windfall or a reward. It is an attempt to restore fairness, to repair harm that was inflicted on people who had every right to belong. Advocacy funding is not about luxury, it's about levelling the playing field. It's about giving people the tools to access what is rightfully theirs and ensuring they're not failed again by the system that failed them before. The compensation figures themselves cannot undo decades of damage, and even when they do offer financial redress, the process to access them can be confusing, overwhelming and re-traumatising without help. That is what the £600,000 fund is for, not paying people off, but ensuring that they reach the redress they are legally entitled to. It is an investment in fairness, in access and in dignity. In that sense, it is very similar to the debates that sometimes swirl around asylum support, where people see numbers in isolation and assume they reflect comfort or wealth, rather than the practical realities of navigating trauma, legal systems, and resettlement. This new funding also reflects why the Windrush scandal, even years later, is far from over. While the original compensation scheme has been in place for some time, many claims remain incomplete, delayed, or underpaid. Some people are still awaiting decisions, and others have faced evidence challenges that have slowed or limited their compensation. This additional layer of advocacy is recognition that having a scheme alone is not enough. People need support to use it effectively. It is not about creating continuity, it's about creating continuity, consistency, and trust for individuals who have every reason to feel wary of a system that once treated them unjustly. The funding also highlights a broader point about justice. True justice isn't simply a number on a page. For many Windrush claimants, justice means being heard, understood, and accompanied through a process that might otherwise feel alienating or re-traumatizing. It means having someone on your side who knows your culture, your history, your lived experience, and who can help translate that into a claim that stands a chance of being fully recognised. It's not just bureaucracy, it's human care. Reactions to this announcement will, of course, vary. Some claimants will welcome it as a lifeline, while others may feel it does not go far enough. Legal representation is still limited. The advocacy cannot address every barrier, but what is being offered is a practical, human-centred step forward. For those navigating decades of unresolved harm, having support in place can mean the difference between a claim abandoned in frustration and a claim successfully completed. It is a small, steady, and vital step in a long journey towards recognition and dignity. Ultimately, this is more than a number or a program. It is a recognition of what has been lost and a commitment to helping people reclaim it. Their voice, their story, their sense of belonging. The Windrush scandal is not just history, it is ongoing, and this funding is part of the work to repair what was broken, to restore what was taken, and to provide the support that every individual deserves to finally see their claims recognised fairly. And for those listening who might question why it matters, it is worth remembering justice delayed is justice denied, but support ensures that it is still possible even decades later. Advocacy can turn frustration into resolution, confusion into clarity, and trauma into a path towards recognition. That is the human impact behind the headline. That is why £600,000 matters to families, to elders, and to communities whose lives were disrupted and who are finally being given the tools and the care to reclaim what's rightfully theirs. This programme explores, as a footnote, the ongoing Windrush compensation process, including the newly announced £600,000 advocacy support fund. It focuses on the lived experiences of Windrush claimants, the historical and legal context of their right to live in the UK, and the human impact of navigating compensation after systemic injustice. The content emphasises empathy, understanding, and practical insight into how advocacy services help restore dignity and access to justice. And I thought I needed to share that because if you were like me and you saw £600,000 to support Windrush, you might think it's cash in hand. You might think, oh, they're giving another payout. What do I do to apply for it? But like I said, this isn't about giving out cash. It's about giving advocacy support. A lot of the older Windrush claimants, they have difficulty with literacy and using computers and stuff like that. So they're going to have advocates that are going to help them through it, help them through all these complicated form fillings, help them get all the evidence together, because they might not recognize what is evidence from what isn't. And that is the reason why they weren't successful in the last round. So hopefully it will work. Hopefully this has helped you to understand what it's all about. And that's all I've got to say for now. I'm jacking it in.